guys, thanks for joining me on this new project. We're going to document the resurrection of this 1542 War Eagle. It was given to me, but there's some little surprises waiting on me as we dive into this project. As you can see here, we have some corroding issues on the transom. There's the wood of the transom, a little concerning, but it is solid. The hull is a 1990. The motor is an 89. Definitely a cool little motor. Electric start, oil injection. Don't make those anymore. Pretty neat little motor. Typical layout, bench seating, got dry storage. It's not a live well, it's just dry storage. It's got plenty of room to keep life jackets and stuff out of the way, which is cool. Don't have to have a tote or anything taking up room to store that stuff. Trailer is so-so. Hubs and wheels are okay. We got to address some issues. A dent up here in the bow we need to try to get out. Maybe try to put some floors in it. No electrical. Electrical is completely shot. It's all got to be ripped out. No nav lights, no bilge pump. I do have a lot of parts nearby in a box, used parts. We'll try to cobble some stuff together here. But, yeah, I'm sure the battery's shot as well, but that's okay. Seating, probably replace that. Probably repaint the boat. Definitely have to address the corrosion on this boat. But first thing I want to do is the motor. So I'm not going to do compression. I know the history of this motor. It's been sitting for about 3 years, but it ran up until that point. So I'm sure the gas is bad in the motor. So probably should pull these carburetors off and get them cleaned. And let's see what we got in store for us. And then we'll test run it after that before we spend any more time and money than we have to. So yeah, let's get these carburetors pulled off and on the workbench, see what we got. Just real quick, a survey of the motor. So we got the carbs off. Motor's very clean. I mean, very clean. It was taken good care of considering the salt life it lived. It was definitely taken care of. So I may try to see if they've got a thermostat available for this thing. I bet it is pretty crusty, but it's definitely been used.
Daddy, can I work on the cardboard?
Missing the cotter key to the prop nut. That's okay. I did crack the bolts to the lower unit. Everything's loose. So when it comes time to service the foot, that shouldn't be an issue. But yeah, she's pretty rough. She's been used for sure, but I think with a little TLC and just a tiny bit of money, we can get it. We can get a pretty fun little motor out of this. And then something I'll definitely spend money on is a new grip, because that's gonna drive me crazy. I can't handle that. No pun intended. So, all right, next step. Okay, quick update. I'm very curious. So I wanted to just to see if these thermostat 10 millimeters will actually come loose. Saltwater motors are notorious for ringing off. So it came right off. So then I was like, well, shoot, let's just take a look. Thermostat is actually in really great shape. Again, I think it was replaced. There's no way this is an 89 thermostat with 100% of its life in saltwater. So kudos to the previous owner. But there's some crusty stuff down in there, and I've never done it, but I've always wanted to try. But you can supposedly flush these out with vinegar, and with pretty good success. And so I may give that a shot, because I see some pretty pretty loose, crusty stuff in there that'll probably come out really easy. This motor will be freshwater the rest of its life, so might as well help it out the best we can. So that's great news. I will replace this anyway, but I'm very happy that came out. So awesome. Okay, so got the carbs apart. Came apart fantastic. I could not have asked for any better of a disassembly. Everything's clean, no damage, no damage from having carb jobs done in the past, like jets not wanting to grab on the screwdriver, being stripped out, gaskets, you know, just being overly used when they should have put carb kits in them in the past. Definitely needs a carb job. I don't think it needs any extensive cleaning. The needles look like they're in great shape. I think it had a carb kit put in it not too long ago. When I say not too long ago, maybe in the past 10 to 15 years. I don't think those are original floats. They look like they're in great shape. So yeah, so I'm pretty excited. If you see, so what makes me determine if I want to pursue a carb kit is, if it'll focus, that needle right there, if it has a groove worn in it, I like to put a carb kit in them, because that's a chance that the needle and seat won't seal, and you'll get a flooding condition, and you'll basically break down and gas will come running out the carb. So these look really great. So yeah, the only thing, these kind of have some pretty significant indentions in them from being installed just for so many years. And then the fuel pump diaphragm, I may check the availability at my local dealership on the fuel pump parts inside this, if it'll focus. There we go. This one is easily serviceable. I think it was intended to be serviced. The newer ones are kind of remove and replace. So I'll see if the parts are available. If they are, I'll crack it open and replace them. If they're not, I'm not going to mess with it, because I don't want to damage a gasket or a diaphragm and have trouble finding that part when I didn't need to. So yeah, so at some point in the next week or so, I will get these dunked in my shade tree carb cleaner parts. I'll probably only let them sit in there for 10 to 15 minutes and spray them out with carb cleaner, and then we'll reassemble and get fresh gas of this motor and take it to the lake. I won't do anything with the water pump right this minute, because I know he put one in it not too long ago, probably within 5 years. So I know it's good just to get me going for this test run. So we will definitely do a more thorough service once the boat is being put back together. So yeah, it's great to work on these old Yamahas. They man, back in the day, they just, quality on everything was so awesome. Look at the linkage there, and everything's adjustable. They don't, you know, they don't have those BS EPA mixture screws that you can't hardly adjust. So these things are really fun to work on. So yeah, we'll move on to the next step. All right, so a couple steps completed. Before I proceeded any further, I wanted to get the titles clear in my name. So came here yesterday, forgot I had to go by the tax office and settle up with them. Fortunately, this boat's a low enough value, old enough, it doesn't have any property taxes, so they're tax exempt. Had to bring that tax exempt form back out here to DNR, and now I was able to get my titles and everything in my name. So that's done. I officially own the boat and motor. I do have a title on the trailer, but in South Carolina they don't care about trailer tags. So also swung by the dealership. They did have the carb fuel pump diaphragms and gaskets. So that was a big success. So I got those, and there's the gasket, and he also found me a fuel line, so we can move on to putting the carbs back on. All right, we're back at the workbench, so let's get these carburetors cleaned up and get the new fuel pump diaphragms installed in the fuel pump. And we got carb cleaner, something I haven't had to buy in a while. Yamaha 2-stroke oil, but yep, let's get them put back together. Okay, so we got the fuel pump diaphragms off, but before we assemble, I'm going to dip the bottom of this number 2 carb that has the fuel pump on it. There's a little bit of crustiness on there, so we'll go ahead and let that sit for about 15 minutes. Just make sure all your gaskets have been removed. And I'm not going to dip the tops because they're pretty clean. So we'll come back to that in a minute. All right, guys, so the next step on the top part of the carburetor with all the parts removed. Again, I'm not dipping these. They don't really need to be dipped on the top. But if you did dip them, no longer than 15 to 20 minutes in that chem dip carb cleaner, over the counter stuff, because it will damage some plastics. And if I would remove as much of this as I could. But anyways, so the object here is just to give it a solid wash. Get all this old, see that yellowy sweet tea, there we go, sweet tea molasses look. We need to get all that stuff washed off this. Okay, now that we've got all that washed off, we're gonna go to our other can of carb cleaner with the straw, and we're gonna go through every circuit on this carburetor and make sure that it is cleaned out. And every time you shoot through a circuit, you're gonna need to see it come out the other side cleanly. So every little jet needs to have the straw stuck in it. As you can see, oops, sorry. As you can see, we're going to flush out every single passageway. And these 2-stroke carburetors are very forgiving. 4 strokes, you have to use an ultrasonic cleaner. Alright, so it's been about 15 minutes. Very nice. Let's get these cleaned up and we'll begin assembly. Alright, so after we pulled the bowls with the jets out of the carburetor dip, this is what we end up with. And they look really great. So what you can do is you want to look through, then you want to turn. Let's see here. Hang on one second. You want to turn and look through all the holes. If you have a dirty carburetor, these are actually plugged up. This is a really important step. That is the high-speed emulsion tube. And then this would be the low-speed jet. Then you want to look through, clean hole. There you go. Then the easiest jet to clean, this is the high-speed jet. You can blow some air through them and dry them out. There you go. So those look really great. And so everything's been washed off, cleaned. We'll begin this reassembly. Okay, so we have the carburetors put back together, fuel line between them attached, no extra parts. The last step, and I would caution everybody on this last step. So these are the idle mixture screws where it makes it lean or rich. And I put these on last because if you're working on this carb, if this carb is upside down on the workbench and you're wrenching down on it, this screw is completely exposed. The newer models, they moved them this direction so they're not sticking up, but you can snap this thing off or damage the carburetor. And if you lose or damage any of these main components, this motor is going to be totaled. So this is very important to, you know, take these simple steps slowly. So I counted 2 1/4 turns when I took them out. So I'm gonna go till they seat. They sit. All right. So they just seated, and you don't tighten them. You go till they stop, and you're gonna go 2 1/4. So 1, 2 1/4. Run them down till it stops. Right there. Let's see. Oh, okay. 1, 2 1/4. Turn them in, makes the engine lean. Turn them out, makes the engine rich. And there's a test we'll do once it's in the lake to make sure we got that dead nuts on. Put brand new set of plugs in, go immediately wide open for about 30 seconds, pull the kill switch, look at the plugs. They should be a dry brown. If they're black, it's too rich. If they're getting white, it's too lean. So we'll do that later. But so this thing's ready to put back on the motor, but there's a couple things I'm gonna do to the motor before we put these back on. Okay, so something I'm gonna do here. They've had issues with this oil sensor. I'm pretty sure it's unplugged. But there's a foam gasket in the bottom of this thing that feeds the oil pump. And this oil looks kind of old, just looking at it, like it's not fresh Yamaha 2M. So I'm going to go ahead and just drain this tank. Because when I put this thing back together and put it in service, I don't want to do any of this ever again. So might as well go ahead and do it now. And so yeah, let's get this oil tank pulled off and get it drained, flushed out, make sure everything's good. Then it can be refilled with fresh oil. So let's do that. Okay, so I wanted to get this on film, but it got really messy really fast. So there's our carbs. So I pulled the oil tank off, poured the oil out, you know, to be recycled like engine oil. And then I took some degreaser and I just shot degreaser up in there, let it pour out. Then I got Dawn dish detergent with a scrub brush, like a bottle brush, and I basically washed this thing inside and out. And I pulled the sensor out, washed it with the screen. And so now this is what we got. Oil tank looks great. Yes, I did wash this thing with soapy water on the inside. It's okay. Just let it dry out. Shooting some carb cleaner in there will make the moisture evaporate. So this is probably what I'm going to do on it this evening. But so that looks great. Got the oil tank all cleaned up. And this is what I wanted to show y'all. So this screen, this is the low oil alarm trigger, and so there's obviously a transistor or something, I guess, in there, or maybe a reed switch that closes, I guess it closes a circuit on that pink wire to ground, and that puts the ignition box into a rev limit, like 2000 RPM, and it doesn't have an audible alarm, I don't believe. So the engine will govern itself, rev limit it with the ignition down to 2000. Run like crap, and that's your warning to put oil in it so you don't burn it up. So I'm pretty sure this was no good, and this is the problem he was having. I think they unplugged it for a while to try it out, and they talked about eliminating the oil injection, but we don't want to do that because you gotta pull the oil pump off and blank over the shaft that spins the oil pump, and then you'd have to do something with these oil lines off the oil pump to the intake that dispenses the oil. Those have to be plugged somehow, so we don't want to do that just yet. That's a decent amount of work. So I want to keep the oil injection. This is the screen, and this is what I wanted to show y'all. So this thing goes together like this, and it goes down in the tank, but that's the outlet to the oil pump. And it's very important to understand, most people don't realize this foam gasket, let's see, goes right there, and when you set it down in there, it seals the oil off from going around the bottom of this into the oil pump and forces the oil to go through this big screen. So it's like a filter system.
Okay. Look at me.
So if you pull this out and put it back in, when this thing's full of oil, you can't see any of this. This foam piece could get lodged in here, and you squish it down in there, you can block off the inlet to the oil pump. And I've heard of people blowing motors up before like that. So you'll starve the oil pump for oil. You won't know. You'll be running down the lake, and the motor will just lock up. So that's very important to check this foam gasket to make sure it's where it should be. And when you install it, if you install it straight in, you won't have any issues. So that's it for this work session this evening. I think next we'll wash the motor, physically, clean the motor off on the inside. While these components are off, we got access to, under the carbs, around the pan. We'll go ahead and clean the motor up and begin assembly, and then we will get some fresh gas to it and see if we can fire it up. Thanks. Alright guys, so I want to do one quick test. I'm curious to know if this sensor is actually working electrically. So I got my voltmeter set here on continuity. So we'll go to the pink to the black. I don't get anything. So assuming, I think it is failed for sure. It must be failed open circuit. So I wonder if that means if it's putting the motor into emergency right now, or if it's not. Interesting. Because if I touch them, if I touch these two wires, I have continuity. But right now this thing's open, and I'm pretty sure it was supposed to close on the bottom when it ran out of oil, because the overheat alarm is also a pink wire, and I think it closes the ground also, I thought. So anyways, we'll put it back together and see what happens. I mean, we're putting it back together regardless, so. But nice to know that it's definitely failed in the open circuit, not a closed. That may help us later if we have an issue. So, all right. All right, so that was good. Man, that looks great. Look at that. Obviously, the nasty side is where the oil tank was, and that works out because you want to do your least washing on the electrical side. And of course, there's not much grime over there. So main parts is just right through here. This is just linkage, not gonna hurt anything. Oil tank, that stuff can get washed a little bit. It's okay. And then just make sure your carbs are plugged, or where your intakes are, and then wash them underneath that pan. That usually gets pretty nasty. And I just took the, which this is, oh look, there's already a dirt dabbler in there to keep it from peeing. This is where it pees to the telltale to let you know it's pumping water. And I guess the nipple's obviously missing, so they had just rigged something up. We can get that part later. But so that pull the nipple out for the where it pees, and then that'll be a nice drain. Let the water run out of there. So yeah, we'll pull this strainer out, dump it, and then we are ready to actually put everything back together. All right, strainer is out, and strainer is definitely doing its job. I'm going to attribute that to probably the old nasty fuel line and the tank that came with this boat. Maybe this was off the last few runs it did 3 years ago. So yeah. All right, we'll get this dumped and continue on. All right, so carbs are back on. The next thing we need to do is a link and sync. So we need to synchronize the throttles. So do you see that screw right there? That's the idle speed screw. So we need to back that all the way out to where it's not touching, but don't let it fall out. Oh man, the sunlight's terrible. I'm sorry. Ah. Okay, so it's not touching. God, the sunlight's bad. Bear with me. So then we're going to undo this linkage. Ooh, good gracious. We're going to undo this linkage that hooks the two throttles together. Probably better get a flat head. I appreciate Yamaha putting both flat and Phillips. So loosen that. And what that does, it disconnects these shadows. It disconnects the two throttles. See that? Now it's got slack. And then the last thing, this screw right here, right there, that has the roller onto the linkage assembly, you're going to disconnect that like that. On the newer motors, they put reverse threads on these. So next thing you're going to do, you're just going to poke a screwdriver and just going to make sure each throttle plate is closed all the way. And you're going to tighten the cross linkage up. Like that, without moving it. Then you're going to take this barrel, shadows. You're going to take this barrel right there. You're just going to bump it up against the linkage, and you're just going to snug down. You're going to snug that one down. And you might, and I'll have to do this off camera, you might want to hold your finger on the barrel and snug this down. On the newer motors, they put backwards threads on them, so it actually snugs the barrel against the linkage and tightens it for you. So they figured that out later in years. But anyways, so let me do that real quick. Okay, so I snugged that barrel down. Now I'm gonna come back in and I'm gonna crack these throttle plates open. Can y'all see that screw right down there? My screwdriver's touching, see it wiggling? That's the idle speed screw. So I'm gonna crack these plates open. It doesn't matter how much right now. And then we will adjust that after we get the motor running. Okay, so next we're going to reinstall the oil tank. Okay, oil tank's back on. Remember, don't forget that foam washer and make sure the screen's back on. So we're gonna take black RTV that's made oil for oil pans and stuff, and we're gonna go right along the inside of this lip. This is an approved thing to do. We used to do it all the time when I was a Yamaha tech. And the reason is when this motor's tilted up in storage, the oil will kind of challenge this seal. That's why the fill's up at the top, because you know the motor's kicked up and this oil's all sitting in there like that. So this tends to leak and it'll just make a big mess. It'll run down, get in the pan, run all over the back of the boat. So we can put some RTV in, and then on one shot just install this. Oops, the wires go that way. You're going to install it with that RTV and just let it sit, and then that'll prevent this thing from leaking, because when I took this apart, this thing was real sloppy in there. So it's just a little added protection for leaks. Okay, so oil tank is back on. Everything went fine with that. Look how clean it is now. Let's see if it'll stay that way. So I did notice this. So yeah, the overheat sensor here in the head, that's just a metallic bimetal switch that closes when it gets too hot. That does the same thing. It ties into the same pink wire as the low oil alarm, or float switch. So that ties, got a ground, and then a tie back into the pink wires over here, which I assume go to the ignition box. So I'm gonna leave all this disconnected. We'll just watch the motor. I got a temp gun just to make sure on this test run. If we do decide to completely disconnect this float switch, we're gonna need to cut these wires because we want the overheat protection still. So we'll wait till we get on the water and try to mess with that. And then once we hook that pink wire in and disconnect this pink wire from the float switch, that should just give us the overheat protection. So, all right, so let's put some Yamaha 2M in here. I wonder if that's gonna leak. That's old. You can buy these, so I think the rubber just gets stiff over time, but we'll deal with that when the time comes. So let's put some Yamaha 2M, oh yeah, the good stuff in. This is actually getting hard to find, probably because just about all these two-strokes are almost eliminated. And then there is some oil from the line to the pump, and then from the pump to the lines into the motor. So we'll just have to, the motor will just have to use that up first. There's no way to flush that out. So after this, we'll put some gas to it and see if it runs. All right, so next step before we go to the lake, he gave me another prop. This is the spare he gave me, and the blades are in better shape. This one obviously dinged something on two of them, but the hub in this thing looks terrible. I don't know. Looks to me like it's spun. Maybe that's just the corrosion giving it that appearance. I don't know. This one looks pretty rough. This one's a smaller diameter. No, this one's a larger diameter. I think I'll just put the damaged one back on there. It'll be fine. For the light duty running we're gonna do. I'd hate to buy a new one. These things are kind of high. I don't know if it's... Maybe my buddy can fill those two spots and we can get this thing cleaned up. I don't know. This is a budget build. I don't want to spend like 120 bucks on a new prop for this thing. So I think I'll just stick this one back on there. But I did check behind the seal. There's no fishing line. The seal looks like it's in good shape. So, and the main thing I'm doing this, the reason I'm doing this is I needed a cotter pin. So potentially without a cotter pin, if you put it reverse, everything could spin itself off. So all right, we'll get that put back together. And let's not forget this step, because that handle is an absolute mess. But we're not going to spend any unnecessary money on this until we make sure. And then I chose to use a Tupperware container or tote. This since we've done so much of this motor, I want to run it with a little bit of back pressure. That will help it help us tune it a little better. Usually I run them on the hose, take them straight to the lake. But this motor is kind of an unknown. It's not like it was running right before we had to fix it. So I've got the water running. This needs to fill all the way to the top. But yeah, we're about to prime the bulb and see what happens. Oh, also I forgot, this thing's electric start. So I got, of course the battery that came with was no good. I got this old junk battery. It's probably on the verge of being no good, but I got the battery charger on it. Let's just see what happens. Ooh. Oh, okay. I think the battery's dead, but maybe it'll start. Alright guys, we're going to end it here. I didn't quite get it started in this clip, but join us in part 2 where I find a few mistakes I made, get it cranked up, and we get this thing to the proving ground and let it do what it does best. Appreciate it. Thanks.